as we were saying, I just feel like TLO, even though he... Okay, even though he's known as the innovator, I know he's been standardizing a lot more. Just like Select,
way more.
Yeah, just like Select, we've seen him, you know, play all over the place in the beginning of Wings of Liberty, and then start to, you know, go macro style, start to play ever so normal. But TLO also brings out these builds that you don't really expect, and it gets this little tiny advantage, or it gets him this little mind game that actually gives him quite a substantial advantage going into like mid and late game. And normally he substantiates that with some sort of economic advantage. Like he likes to do some little trick, and then behind that he's actually macroing like a beast, taking like a really quick fourth base somehow.
Yeah.
And that's why I think it's going to be so fascinating. But right away we have Oz, who is getting a little lucky here, scouting his opponent first on a 4-player map.
Yeah, that's very, very key, especially on a map like Whirlwind, because these spawning positions is very nice for Protoss to kind of push, because Zerg will, I mean, their expansions are getting closer and closer to Protoss. That's just how the first expansions work, and then eventually start moving away. But you might be wondering, like, why is it tough for Zerg to handle the pushes? Well, someone like Oz, with like an early 5-gate, 6-gate pressure, he got all kinds of cool builds. If you thought Bishu had cool builds, Oz is another player that has those early pressure builds, and if you expand closer to it, it's just tougher for a player like TLO to hold it off. Although TLO, again, just like you said, has been standardizing, but he still has some pretty unique flavors. Like if you watch, I read a recent article on his ZVZ, and TLO is still a very cerebral player. Like even if he does something a little bit unconventional in terms of his builds, he still thinks a lot. He's a big math guy, saying this is how much damage you can do. Like for example, like he was saying, like he thinks no roaches should really exist at late game ZVZ, like really little. Like basically Hydras just rule everything. And
I agree.
So those kinds of mentalities, TLO has great ideas, and I just want to see TLO be able to put the hands to the mind. And when he does, he's a scary player.
That's right. It's important to note that even though TLO has been training his hands, as you were saying, training his, I guess, dexterity in the game and his mechanics, he does suffer from an injury. And I shouldn't say an injury, but he suffers from like wrist problems, which is really unfortunate, because I feel like if he didn't have those wrist problems, he would be one of the #1 foreigners in the world. I really feel like he's one of the few people.
He was at one point.
Yeah, he's one of the few people that actually takes the game very, very seriously in terms of where to position your army, what are you attacking, how am I going to do this build, what does it accomplish. And a lot of players just say, oh, this is what the metagame is doing, and they go from there. They have great mechanics, and they're able to, you know, just make a lot of units and attack with them. But TLO, he's one of those players that he knows what he's doing with them, and that's something that's actually very rare in the scene.
You know what's also kind of very rare is that you take a double gas right before your third base starts. That's a little bit unconventional, considering that normally you get your third hatchery as soon as possible, maybe 4:15. But now TLO's scaling it back by about 25, 30 seconds and saying, I'm going to gas earlier. What does TLO have planned?
This is about a minute and a half earlier, actually, Frodan.
I'm talking about the hatchery. That was
oh, yes, the hatchery.
But you're saying the gases are a minute?
Okay. Of course I'm focusing on the gases. You're focusing on the expansion. That's absolutely right.
No, but explain, like, what can TLO do with this early gas?
It's going to be an early lair, I think. It could be a baneling bust, so I shouldn't actually go with that just yet. But there it is. The lair goes down. Normally when you're getting this big of a bank, you're not actually going to go for a Zergling Baneling. Also, the metabolic boost should have been started really, really early, but this probe shouldn't get a sight. And there it goes. But what this means is probably Spire Tech, and we're going to see, you know, basically no units out on the map at all. Maybe a couple of Zerglings here and there, but when I mean no units, like normally you go Roaches and Zerglings to defend those, you know, 9-10 minute pushes. That's not going to happen. TLO is actually saying, I'm not going to expect any attacks in this early game stage. Tech directly over to Spire, and then I should be fine. But just as I say that, I'm completely wrong with my prediction. He puts down a Roach Warren. Which says to me, I'm going to get really fast Glio Reconstitution. But I do feel like this build actually suffers a lot of economic loss, and I don't think Glio Reconstitution is going to time up with any particular
he's going for Roach
defense.
Drop. Oh. This is kind of cool. Is he going to be able to even get it out in time to protect his third base? Because Oz is already knocking on the front door. Warpgate's done. +1 is going to be finished, so even early Zerglings are not going to be as effective. This is vintage Oz aggression, and TLO has his Overlord scouting everything, like in the natural, so he knows the Chrono on the Forge has been non-stop pushed, and the initial Warp-ins are about to commence. No, wait! Oz forgot Warpgate. I thought it was done.
Wait, what?
Oh my goodness, what happened? I actually didn't see it in the production tab. I thought Warpgate was done, but it didn't even start. How did I miss that? I guess it's always something that you always assume. Like, I thought he had Warpgate done too. He's like, I got the pylon.
Oh my god.
Wow. And the Zella and Archons, the Zella and Soccer were like, let's do this. And no one else came.
Oh my gosh.
It was, wow.
Frodan, quick reminder for me, never let me predict a TLO match again. Okay? Just I remember
slow Overlord drop.
In Season 1, me and In Control were like, oh, it's TLO. So let's just find out what we see, because if we predict, we're going to look like idiots. I look like an idiot.
he's got Overlord speed.
Observer is going to actually pass over these 6 Overlords.
Oh, he sees it.
At
he
a
knows.
Very convenient time.
He doesn't even have Warpgate. How's he going to defend against this?
Oh my god.
If Oz holds against this man, I don't know what to say. If he holds, this would be one of the most disgusting defenses I've seen in a very long time. Roach is about to be loaded into the Overlord. Oz is still on the clock. He's trying to chrono out his Warpgate as soon as possible. He ran out of Nexus energy to chrono boost because he's been pushing so hard for it. He's trying to squeeze out an Immortal, but the Immortal really can't protect against anything. One Immortal can face off against 5 Roaches if you can isolate them accordingly. And if Oz plays his card right, maybe. I don't know, man. The Warp Gates are still like, they're just still transforming. Some units are still coming out of the gateways. What is this game, Andre?
It's madness, man.
He needs to get a second Immortal out. Oh, needs to protect that Immortal. Use the probes to block it off, Oz. Oh, the Sentry does not get the Force Field in time. He was trying to be a little bit greedy with space, but it doesn't even get the Force Field to squeeze it out. Oz now in full crisis mode. One more pops. The probes at the natural should be safe, but Oz forced to pull more probes, and the Roach count is very high in the main. And Oz's supply count is still still dropping, while TLO is still remaining strong. This drop is just non-stop, a ferry service, if you will. Between the third base and the natural expansion, Oz is losing way too much at this stage. The Immortals that come out are almost instantly dying.
This is patented 4-gate aggression into Immortal push, except you forget Warpgate. That's what happens, Frodan.
Oh, he had such a perfect bridge, too, because TLO was playing so tech-heavy, he didn't even have a third Queen to inject the third and protect him from the early Zealot Stalker. It was just perfect scenario for Oz, but what an unfortunate series of events. We've all been there, whether you played Protoss or played against Protoss, where one player forgot Warpgate, and it is crushing. And because if you don't know, Warpgate units make faster than regular Gateway units, because it's 5 seconds additional on top of the front-loaded Warpwind. So Oz does stabilize, but he's got 4 probes. He's got 4 probes, and he can make 1 probe at a time. GG. In those scenarios, man, I wouldn't blame Oz to not even say GG, but to remain good sportsmanship like that is awesome to see.
Okay. Now, after I'm done looking at the game, I'm going to go ahead and analyze what TLO did. TLO did a Roach Zergling drop around 9 minutes and 10 seconds.
Well, what's that supposed to hit?
That's supposed to counter Immortal pushes, which are very common on Whirlwind. Whirlwind features like kind of cliffs going up and down, and then you have to like circle around if you want to get a good, I guess, a good surround. But what that drop is going to accomplish, it's just like TVP on how I have 2 medevacs over, you can see the medevacs over there, and they could have units in there. So it's like, oh, I have to prepare for that drop. All of a sudden, if TLO puts 6 Overlords in the corner, he can easily just stop any potential Immortal busts. You attack with 3 Immortals, a single Warp Prism, and a ton of Gateway units. You're normally on 8 Gateway aggression. But all of a sudden, if you split that up and just put Spine Crawlers at your natural, you're able to defend all that really, really
Do you sack the third then from there?
Yeah, you sack the third, and then you just go for all-out base trace. You can even sack the natural as well.
Oh. Well, I would love to see that happen if that was the case, but Oz forgets Warpgate, so that kind of throws a bone. You're like, man, this build is specifically designed to kill Immortal builds. It's like, also, he can write that down in his builder notebook. Also kills if he forgets to do warp gate. Guys, that game was brought to you by GoToMyPC. If you want to do anything from remote access, remote privacy, file transfers, multiple user access, go to nasl.tv/p/GoToMyPC for a special offer on how you can manage all those things remotely. We'll be back after this with game number 2 between Oz and TLO. What's going to happen? We don't know, so stay tuned.